Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. And the hardest part of this presentation is going to be pronouncing entrepreneur. So why entrepreneur, right? Who here is satisfied with the way we do things? Anyone? Good. I would call you a liar or a jerk. Entrepreneurship is the reason I'm kind of using this as like the foil to sort of discuss emergency management is typically it's a goal to improve something, right? You want to invent something, you want to innovate on something. So I'm going to talk a lot about innovation and creation. These are two different things. Innovating is fixing things that already exist. Creation is coming up with new stuff. We've innovated a lot of stuff. We're kind of stuck. We need to create new things and try to break through that. So yeah, who thinks we can do better? Perfect. Everyone's hand went up. So to just drive it home, why entrepreneurs? And I pre-wrinkled the screen for you so it's harder to read. The natural connection, right? Entrepreneurs are used to working with scarce resources. Who here has all the money, people, and tools that they need at any given time? There probably is a couple communities. A must-succeed mindset, right? The mission that we have, we can't just wing it. We have to really kind of be all in and know that we have to win this fight. And we want to learn quickly from failures and implement solutions immediately. That means like not waiting a year to do your after action. If you learn something that day, you're implementing it for the next day. My notes are huge. Let's see here. Yeah, and basically entrepreneurs just like make cool stuff, right? That's why we have iPhones. That's why we have the internet. Like someone had to come up with this and discover this technology. So I'm going to talk about a few different mindsets. Who here is driven by passion? Probably a lot of you, because you're not getting paid to do the job. It is, you know, it might be a volunteer thing. It might be an additional duty. We are passion driven. Entrepreneurs are passion driven. It's probably the most important trait because a lot of what we deal with is hard. It's difficult. You get a lot of pushback, right? Again, when you go to talk to your boss and say, hey, I need to buy this widget and this widget is $50,000. If you go to them and you're like, yeah, it'd be nice to have, you're not going to get it. If you're like, this is going to change lives. Like we are going to revolutionize emergency management. Wow, that actually sounds pretty cool. I might be on board with this. So driven by passion. I'm going to shrink my text so I can actually see everything. The other thing is a lot of us are sort of like, this is not just a job. This is like an experience. This is something we would seek out and do even if it wasn't a thing. Who here reads books about emergency management? Who here listens to podcasts, watches documentaries, right? All of that stuff is an indicator that you are beyond just the normal person stepping up and saying, I'm going to do the job. Like it is something that is a calling for you. So same with entrepreneurs. I used to host a podcast called EM Weekly. I could use the numbers. I haven't made an episode in like a year. So if you could punch that up, that would be great. And just to indicate and give you my bona fides, I walk the walk. I kind of have had this entrepreneur mindset for a long time. And the reason is because I hate the way we do things. I have a lot of ADHD energy. You're going to see me like pacing around, constantly out of breath. And I just want to do everything all the time. And so this is actually, Emily's my boss. So she has to deal with this constantly. You guys only have to deal with it for about 45 minutes. But I want to disrupt things. So the last 3 years, I got to tour the country. I was a private sector emergency manager, so I had a travel budget, and talk about artificial intelligence. This was me at the IEM conference in the biggest room they had there, and it was filled, and it was awesome. I was one of the first people to use social media emergency management. When Twitter first came out, I was actually working for BM. We were in a staff meeting. I looked at my phone, I'm like, this doesn't look good. Something happened in Boston, and something blew up in Boston. And I think Joe Flynn was the director at the time. I think Erica actually might have been acting director. I think Joe wasn't there. And I'm like, something big is going on. It sounds like a terrorist attack in Boston. So we're probably going to do something. And they're like, how did you know this? It's like, Twitter? And they're like, what's that? And I was like, well, people are telling me this. And they're like, you trust people? And I'm like, no, I don't, but this looks like something. So Erica told me to run down the hall and tell the VSP commander what you know. And if I remember correctly, and maybe I'm inflating the story so it sounds cooler for this presentation, we were aware of the situation, and the state police started to offer support about 2 hours before the official request went in, obviously because they were completely overwhelmed. I was on UVM's UAS team. They're presenting here with Adam Zilka, Jonathan Lee Dunn, who's like one of the most amazing people ever, who passed away last year. We started flying drones before everyone else. There was no rules. There was no regulations. There was no laws. The FAA was like, please don't hit anything. We did. I chucked one in the air in St. Albans and lost it in the woods. I was like, how much was that? And he said, $50,000. So I crawled through the woods and I found it. But all this is to say that, you know, there's a community of us. I want more of you. This whole sort of presentation is to give you permission to go break stuff and try new things. You know, I'm going to list off a bunch of people, you know, that you should look up, like Matt Green. He's out of Washington State. He is doing everything to like create inclusive emergency management. He wants everyone to be an emergency manager. John Scardina, who I used to work for, that was this company. He's created immersive training experiences that have, you know, we made movies, and when you failed at something, there was consequences. How many exercises do we have where it's always win, right?
You spell that last name?
Scardina, S-C-A-R-D-E-N-A, the Readiness Lab. How many times do we go to an exercise? We know what's going to happen at the end, and we're going to win. That doesn't happen in real life. We made like, I made videos. I was the video guy of like explosions. So when I said, hey, this building is collapsing, I made a video of the building collapsing. All of a sudden it's real. We had a counter that would run in the corner of the screen. So when people are like, hey, I'm tired, I want to eat lunch. Great, no problem, go eat lunch. What's that counter? Oh, that's all the victims. These are people dying. So the time that you talk to me, 10 more people are gone. And you want a half-hour lunch or an hour lunch? It'll probably be about 400 to 500 people dying. So much more realistic. You feel that stress. It makes it more fun. I mean, we're weirdos. So yes, it is fun. But, you know, just trying to talk like, it's not just me. There's a whole community out there. There's probably people in this room who are doing innovative stuff. So we want to like embrace that, build that up. And I want you all to connect with me afterwards. Again, we're built different. Emergency managers and entrepreneurs, right? We have to do a lot with a little. So that means that your widget that you really wish you had, you can't afford it. It doesn't exist. So you have to invent it. You have to come up with the next best solution. Minimally viable bureaucracy. Who's ever heard of this? Or minimally viable product. That's usually like the more entrepreneurial thing. But instead of waiting for the perfect system, you get whatever works and you start with that and you implement as quickly as possible. So if you have an idea today that's going to make an impact right now, do it. Don't waste your time trying to form Emily, earmuffs for a second. No committees, no analysis, just do it. Like, see if it works. Especially in the early events of a disaster, right? That's when we're all kind of like spinning our tires trying to figure out something to do. We're like, I guess we stand up ICS. Is that the best solution? Maybe. Or can we do something different that we've never done before to immediately start to impact lives? The other thing about entrepreneurs and emergency managers is there isn't a playbook, right? We always kind of like lean on our training and our exercises and our plans and our procedures. The famous line, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? It immediately goes out the window. Your plan gets you far enough to the point where you have to innovate. And you can tell when things go bad because when they get to that innovation point, everything stops. There's panic, there's fear. And you're like, I don't know what to do. So everyone's gonna experience that in this room. If you go to a disaster, it exists. The thing is, if you sort of think of it like that and you embrace it and you enjoy it and it's exciting, now it's not scary. You're like, all right, now we gotta wing it. We have to come up with a new plan. We have to come up with that new widget and we gotta try to do it right now because people are dying. And the reason is, this is our workspace. This is in California after the fires 2 years ago. Imagine you wake up and that community's gone. There's no playbook for this. An entire city gone. You know, imagine paradise. The Maui fires, historic, like their history was burned to the ground. It's gone. It does not exist anymore. You can't have a plan that covers for all of that. If your shelters burn down, where do you put people? If this isn't the only spot that's being impacted, you know, where do you go for help? Imagine a regional like the New Madrid earthquake that's supposed to strike the Midwest, or the Cascadia fault that's going to hit the Pacific Northwest. They're not going to have help coming. There's not enough help in this country. I think New Madrid said they would need something around 120 type 1 USAR teams. Is there any USAR folks in here? So we have, I think, 20 type 1 teams in the country. Not all of them are on call at one time. You have to muster them. So that means that the other 100 USAR teams they need don't exist. So what do? Do you just throw in the towel? Absolutely not. You got to figure it out. Who do you want to show up? This is this is sort of a statement for like salesmanship, right? Like, I need to be the person that I'm, I want the person I'm talking to like want to buy from me and want to be invested in me. That's what you do as an entrepreneur. For us, our clients are potentially the victims of a disaster. It's our community members. It's our friends and family. It's our neighbors, right? So you need to have that mindset of like, I need to be the very best and I can't not have an answer. I have to have an answer. I have to come up with an option and I need to do it really quickly. So when you're thinking about who do you want to show up, I want you to like reverse that perspective. Think about who your constituents want to show up and that you match that, because you have your own sort of biases, what you think is awesome for you. They're going to have an entirely different expectation of who's showing up. So do some market research. And that's because mediocrity is not acceptable in our job. This is Joplin, Missouri. Again, these folks, this was like graduation day for the high schools. So they were all out having a great time. Like, this is supposed to be the happiest time of summer, right? Kids are moving on, going to college, starting their lives. And then this happens. You can't be mediocre in this situation. You have to be the absolute best. You need to be the leader that this community needs. Pete Gaynor, who was the former head of DHS and FEMA, got handed the COVID mission after Chad Wolf got removed during the last Trump administration. I happen to know him and had the luxury of hanging out and having a couple drinks after a conference or an event. And I asked him, like, can you imagine, like, you were an emergency manager in Providence, Rhode Island, and now you were running DHS and FEMA. I was like, how did you get there? And he said he learned very early on that A's surround themselves with A's. So basically what that means is you find the best people and you surround yourself with them. And even if they're not an A yet, but they desire to be the A, then you drag them into your circle. And you can do anything with a team of A's. You don't need a plan. You don't need a playbook. Like, you can solve all the world's problems with people who are fully invested in solving the world's problems. Because again, are we going to have an EF5 tornado hit Vermont? Probably not. But I bet Montpelier, Barrie, the Northeast Kingdom, this felt the same. When your heart and soul of your downtown is gone, it's devastating. And you go, what do we do now? And if everyone's kind of standing around going, I don't know, what do we do now? Nothing gets done. By the way, all of you are A's. You're at a conference. You're at my presentation, which makes you an A+. So, consider yourselves blessed as A's. But yeah, if you have people holding you back or telling you no, it's okay to shed them, get rid of them, or keep them at arm's length. They might have a strength in another area, but in a situation like this, you want A's. And the reason is, who recognizes this, right? You don't go from that to this, without this. These are your A's, right? In this scenario, like, you'll notice, there's some National Guard folks, I think, in here. No one's wearing a uniform. No one's got a badge. This is people who are like, we're in it. So we have to do this right now. These people these are the A team. And what they're doing is adapting, right? Roads are washed out. People need water. So we got to figure out, we're not waiting for helicopters. We're looks like pickup trucks, 4-wheel drive. We'll get to the folks that need help. If people have questions or comments or anything, please feel free to raise your hand and I will probably ignore you and forget that you did it. So.
Please use the
yes
feature. I am monitoring it and will interrupt.
That's like her job. I'm like, I just go on tangents and she's like, no, we have to like do the actual work. So the other thing is a must succeed mindset. Like, this is very key to entrepreneurship, right? It's also really important for us. I'll bring this up throughout the presentation because you're going to come up against a lot of naysayers, right? When you are trying to convince your town that you need an emergency operations center and they don't have offices, they're going to say that's insane. There's no money for it. And they're going to say, we don't have the people for it. We don't have the time. We don't have the energy. We don't have the resources. Everybody's too busy. Your job is to get to yes. And that's where you get that minimally viable bureaucracy. No matter what, you need that. You need an EOC. You need a spot to organize and to coordinate. You need communications equipment, period. Like, that's not an option during a disaster. If you don't have those things, you're spinning your tires. So how do you get there? And how do you cut through that noise? I'm very comfortable operating with in the gray and like figuring out, I'm like eyeballing her because she's probably taking notes for my next employee report or whatever, my performance record. That's where I'm comfortable, is like, no, all right, cool. Here's the wall. I can go around the wall, or I can go over the wall, and there's no rule saying I can't. So I'm going to do it. Because that on the other side of that wall is the mission, and I have to get there no matter what, for my constituents, because I expect that. So we have to have that, must succeed. The other thing is, when you have that mindset and you don't have a defeatist mindset, which is really hard right now, obviously, because we're just in a tumultuous time. If you are defeated, then no one is going to believe you. They're not going to follow you, and nothing is going to change. If you are inspirational and you're excited about something, and you're good at selling the idea, then you can achieve literally anything. You'll find the grant. You'll find some cool, rich neighbor who's like, yeah, I want to have my name on the side of a building. I never thought about an EOC. That seems kind of cool. Like, I'd love to do that. Figure it out, right? That's what we do. Like, failure is not an option. You will fail a lot of times. You're going to fall on your face, but we don't stay in failure. We get over it really quickly, and we learn from that failure, because success is non-negotiable. We're not going to sit here and argue with someone that your idea is right, and they say no, and they don't have that information. They haven't done the work. They just don't want to do it. Speed of adaptation determines survival. This is really challenging in Vermont because a lot of innovation is technology based, and in a lot of places we don't have technology. So how do we adapt to that and keep up with all of the new challenges and concerns of infrastructure failures, and plus the need to do everything on a piece of technology? Every setback contains valuable intelligence. So when you do fall on your face, you get up and you say, oh yeah, there was a stump there. I'm not going to trip on this next time, or I'm going to flag it so I remember it and I don't ever do that again. And then finally, on the National Fire Academy, who's been to the National Fire Academy? What's it say on the statue out front? I believe it's adapt, overcome. So I think it's adapt, overcome, excel or something, I believe. There's a plate, maybe not. Maybe it's a different place. Anyways, when I run the National Fire Academy, it's going to say adapt, overcome, and excel. And that's what we're going to do. So it's really important to just have that, like, okay, I've come up against the wall. The ladder didn't work. So now I'm going to kick the wall down, which is more fun, honestly. Oh, yes. One other thing. So Jeff Santor, who's a buddy of mine, he was my fire chief when I was in South Plattsburgh. He's a park police officer in New York. He also started the one of the people who started the New York incident management team. They're I think they're type 3 team now. He very succinctly put it as, if it is safe, legal, logical, and ethical, do it. So if you come up against every other roadblock in existence and you're like, there's still one more option, if it can meet that very, very small formula, do it anyways, right? Don't let policies, procedures, any of that stuff hold you back if it's going to save a life, within reason. Again, following the safe, legal, ethical approach. Who knows what the OODA loop is? Oh yeah, military, of course. What's the OODA loop?
Observe, orient, decide, act.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just take credit for it again. I'm in the Air Force. I'm gonna say the Air Force came up with it. I think it was a fighter pilot that initially came up with it, but the idea is you're in a situation, you look around, you're like, whew, this sucks. So you've now observe the situation. Now you're going to orient yourself. Okay, what can I do about it? All right, we've got this many folks to deal with this situation. We need this. Now we need to decide, all right, we've got a bunch of options. What's the best option for this scenario right now? And then you act. And it doesn't stop there. You look at the outcome. You observe again. You orient. You decide. You act. And you go through this process over and over and over. And iteratively, you're going to get better, right? You're going to eventually get to that goal. And you're going to make wrong decisions. Who here has responded to a disaster before? What's the first 24 hours like? Right. Why is it mad? What is it? Why is it chaos? Why is it madness?
You've got a situation, the plans that you had in place may or may not work. Even if they do work, they may not work the way that you want them to.
Yep.
Or need them to. And you're essentially handed a journal with the ending already written and told, okay, now you get to write how you get to this point.
Yes, and you're doing with that information and a lot of pressure to act. No matter what, we put it on ourselves. We have to do something. That is like a very common refrain is like, no, we don't have time to think about this. Do something. So the OODA loop gives you that opportunity. You're like, I'm going to do something. I just need to build a little bit of a picture here to understand what we're doing so we don't make the situation worse. And then you're making a informed decision, right? It's not a panic decision that is like, we have to do something. So let's deploy the USAR team over here because the weather sucks over there. No, it's like, all right, what do we know? This is the worst hit area. All right, great. Now we have observed and we're orienting ourselves. What do we have for resources? Well, we got a USAR team. Can we split them? Yeah, sure. Why not? All right, let's send these folks to the worst one. Decide. Okay, we've done that. We're sending them there. Act. They get there. Life is good. We're saving lives. We need more help here. The other team didn't have that. Great. We're going through the loop again. Now we're redeploying resources to help out the most impacted area. Really, really easy. And it's something you can do with everything. It's just good, like life lessons. The most expensive words in business, we've always done it this way, right? Same with emergency management. We really have not, sometimes we pat ourselves on the back for being innovative. It hasn't changed that much, really. Emergency management, sort of ICS and NIMS started back in Firescope in California, and that sort of came out of the military command and control. And then Hurricane Andrew happened, and we're like, oh crap, with these really large incidents, we have a lot of help coming in. We got to figure out how to deal with that. Then 9/11 happened. It was like, now we got to deal with terrorism, and we focused on Homeland Security. Then Katrina happened, and we were like, crap, we focused too much on the Homeland Security and the terrorism, and now we got to like swing back the other way. But for the most part, ICS and NIMS hasn't changed that much. I put this in here. This is not a shot at anyone, but like, here's the two sort of views. This is the one I'm trying to move us towards. Traditional policy, procedures, drive decisions, right? Which there is a time and place for that, of course. ICS exists for a reason, but you need to adapt your decision based on needs through the OODA loop. Emergency management largely was first responder. I used to call it the retirement home for fire chiefs and EMS chiefs and police chiefs. It's not anymore. It's its own profession, but we need to be agile. We need teams of responders, citizens, volunteers, diversity of experiences and skills, because we're not dealing with a singular problem, right? It's not tactical, it's strategic. We're trying to coordinate, and we're looking from the 50,000 foot level, not from the door kicker person on the fire line. If something isn't available, request gets denied. Sorry, we're too busy. We can't come up with it. I'm advocating we find a way to yes. What is the next best solution? How do we sort of build these relationships ahead of time so that we don't have to make the request in the first place? We just know where the stuff is because we have really good relationships with our neighbors. Committees, subcommittees, paralysis by analysis. I'm a state employee. We do have a lot of these. It is part of the job, but again, minimally viable bureaucracy for the rest of us, right? How do you not layer too much that delays it, that holds it back? There are times where people lean on that, hoping it'll die on the vine. Like, we don't want this idea to happen. It's too hard. So we're just going to jam it into some committee or something and hope that people forget about it and then it goes away, versus like, let's execute on it and we'll figure out the rules later. For you, not us, right, Emily? Every disaster is a laboratory. We can learn live. We can try new things. We can learn better from others who have experience. Don't just rely on the old plan or the outdated process that didn't work last time. We need to adapt to technological changes. Email is old, right? It's Facebook. It used to be for the kids. That was me. Now I'm like, it's not for us anymore. I'm not a kid anymore. These things change, they evolve. There's new hazards, new concerns, more complexity. A hurricane striking the Gulf is no longer just a flood concern. You have infrastructure, you've got technological issues with, oil plants and hazardous materials and communications and internet. People are not as self-reliant. So we need to learn from every single incident. Again, that iterative process of entrepreneurship, right? All right, this is what I'm trying to get to. This is what I have. How does this work? Nope, that broke. We need to start over. You need to innovate what didn't work. So like if you have a process that was like, all right, that's pretty good. We can probably make this work. And then create what didn't exist. Like if you're like, man, I really wish we could do this, then do it. Don't try to shoehorn that idea into something we already have, because it's probably not going to work, especially in ICS and NIMS. It's designed to be structured and hard to change. Who likes change? I love change. Yeah, it's fun. It's exciting. Every day is new. My ADHD is like every 30 seconds. I'm like having a whole new experience. It's awesome. Don't fear change. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So embrace it. Like if there's new things, don't tell other people no, right? Like that sucks. If you are a leader and you have someone who's like, I have this really great idea, don't say no, right? Emily's giving me.
Studiously ignored.
Yes. I have an idea fairy list that Emily has me take my ideas that are like, this is not going to happen right now. And it goes in the list and we talk about it in a few weeks. And if it can happen, it can happen. But she's very supportive. And I've got to do a lot of really cool projects already in my, short 8 months here. Because I have a good leader that understands that. And she has a good boss that understands that. So even if you're not the one innovating, you might be the one in charge who frankly doesn't have the time or energy to do it. Be open to it, encourage it. Stuff is changing really fast. And you can't have the excuse of like being a Luddite. Like, I don't like technology. I don't want to do it. Unfortunately, this is how everything's moving, right? We do everything in software. Web EOC, Everbridge, our alerting system. These are pieces of software we rely very heavily on in a disaster. We have to use this. Teams and remote meetings and all this stuff. We're in this now. That's there. Hardware, drones, sensors, Internet of Things. We're getting a lot of data now that we never had before. So if you're open to that and you are willing to ingest it, you can get a lot of information really, really quickly. But you need to be aware of how to use it. You need to practice it. And you can't just say, no, I'm not going to do it because I'm a curmudgeon. I don't like it or whatever. It's going to be there whether you use it or not. And if you don't take advantage of it, the town next to you will. And we're looking at like some pretty wild stuff in the future. Artificial intelligence. Like I said, I spent 3 years going around the country to conferences all over the place, meeting with federal agencies, private sector groups, and trying to just get them to understand the risks and the benefits and what works and what doesn't work. We as employees of the state, we need to be efficient with our tax stuff. So if there's something that can make me get a task done faster and more efficiently, we have to embrace that. We're going to be diligent with just, funding. But more importantly, like this keeps us ahead of the curve, right? So the further out we have information, the more time we have to sort of prepare for that jump off point when things go into improv mode. So just like some thoughts on this, like I said, there's a presentation day on drones and UAS from the Spatial Analysis Lab and Pat McLaughlin with the Hazmat USAR team. Highly recommend you check that out because that's new technology. He's got all sorts of cool sensors and stuff. There are apps like River Aware that can help you, track flooding events in your community. There's AI systems that now can interpolate data between sensors so that you can predict flooding. There's a company called FloodMap that's doing this. The National Weather Service just actually released, I think this morning, their, what is it called? The predictive flood?
Yeah, but Scott Whittier is going to be talking about
Okay. So check out Scott Whittier's presentation. This stuff is here. This is not, far-fetched. The other thing about entrepreneurs is endlessly curious, right? So one of the things that I've seen in a lot of recent disasters is leadership that was not curious or stifled curiosity. We never saw it coming. Who's heard that? How do you really? You've never, like, the river's right here, or the highway is right there. The railroad tracks are right here. You never thought something bad could happen here? That's bad. You're not being curious. You're not trying to appreciate what risks we have. Like, what's our biggest risk in Vermont? Flooding, right? Probably. What's a weird risk that you don't think about? Like, who here has some? Go ahead, Spencer.
Wildfires.
Yeah, all of a sudden, today, right now, we're in a very high wildfire day. That's not something we used to have to face very often. I think this summer we're on, like, I don't know, we had it in the spring, we have it now. Yeah.
Train derailments.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going southbound from Canada.
I live in St. Albans. We have a giant rail depot there. If you look at the Google images, there's, 30, 40 rail cars lined up with petroleum in it. Any hazmat folks in here? What is a rail car? Isn't it like 30,000 gallons of liquid, I think? That would be real bad. We also live under the busiest air corridor probably on the planet. I'm an ab geek, just another distraction I can have. Go on my flight aware, I'm like, oh, what was that? That sounded different. It's not uncommon to have A380s fly over us. Those can carry like 250, 300 people. That can fall out of the sky. Who here has a plan for a sudden mass casualty with a very large jet with a ton of fuel crashing in your backyard? Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Do you think they were prepared after 9/11 to have a jet crater the earth in their community? It's a volunteer fire department that showed up. That's the situation they were in. So be curious, right? And also not just like, it doesn't have to just be disaster stuff. Don't be a complete weirdo. That will burn you out. You'll get chewed up and spit out. Be curious about other stuff. I'm in a constant cycle of like, I got all this cool stuff, burnout. All this cool stuff, burnout. I just kept going into it. And therapy helps. And then I was like, I need to do something else. And I like took a piece of wood and I was like, what would I make with this? And I like made a headphone holder. I have a ton of headphones. There were headphones laying all over my desk. It was driving me crazy. So I just built a headphone holder. I was like, that's pretty awesome. And then I started messing with other stuff. And then I I got like an email from someone and they asked me a bunch of questions and I just respond to emails because that's what I do. And it ends up with this guy with Popular Mechanics. And I was the first non-editor from Popular Mechanics I saw, thank you, to be featured in their do-it-yourself section, the front of Popular Mechanics. I've been reading Popular Mechanics since I was a little kid. And I was like, this is so cool because it was two curious moments. Like, what can I do with this wood? And then, hey, there's this weird email asking me some questions. I'm like, what the heck? I'll respond to it. And now I'm featured forever in Popular Mechanics, which is like the cool, like that is my highest achievement. Like I will never in my life do something more important. The coolest one, I went to get a haircut and it's like an old dude haircut place, right? Traditional, just a bunch of old guys complaining about stuff. And my son came with me to get a haircut and there's Popular Mechanics up on the wall. And he goes, my dad's in that. And they're like, nah. And I showed him and I was like, I am king in this place right now. A couple weeks ago, I was at an EMD training and the city Winooski was asking like, hey, I saw the other language materials you guys have, but we have a bunch of languages in town that aren't covered in that. What can we do? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to my buddy, Anthony, who's presenting here. He actually might be presenting right now, who works for New York City Emergency Management. I was like, hey, can you help me out? And he's like, yeah, I can help you out. He's going to set me up with a meeting with their commissioner of community development. You know how much New York City spends on language stuff? We're going to get that for free now, just because of an email. Like, be curious. Like, call people, email them, go on LinkedIn, bug people. Watch the TED Talks, get inspired, do non-disaster stuff. But this drives everything. If you're being curious in the off season, when it comes time to play in the pros, you're going to have that mindset. You're going to be much more able to adapt because it's not something you have to foster it. You have to grow it. Another really, really important mindset. No excuses, right? You're not too busy to improve something in your life. You're not too old to use your imagination. If you feel like you're stuck, Start with easy wins, right? This is called behavioral economics. If you want to run a marathon, very few of us can get up the next day and run a marathon. I mean, there's probably some like Adonises out there that are just built different, but for most of us, it's a process. We have to start. If you want to like become a painter, you're not going to become Monet overnight. It's a process that you have to do. If you want to be a musician, I have guitars, keyboards, I have an electric drum set. I don't know how to play any of them. I keep buying stuff and my wife's like, what are you going to do with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to mess around with it. I haven't learned any of it. But, you know, I learned a little like lick and a chord and I'm like, all right, cool. Like I've learned something. Now I'm like a little bit more inspired to do this. So give yourself an easy win. For emergency management, you know, that might be, all right, instead of focusing on the LEMP, which we're constantly chasing you about, you know, maybe it is thinking about that. What if we had an airplane that came down? Like, what would we do? Where's our resources? How are we going to handle this? Or the train car tips over. You know, easy win is I'm thinking about it. That's a first step. If you've considered a hazard, I highly recommend every single person in this room goes back and does a hazard vulnerability analysis because it drives everything. That's an easy win. And then explore something you don't know about. I think that's really important. You'll find that pretty much anything you do peripherally will support other stuff you do. So if you learn music, develop rhythm, you know, you find that flow that musicians have. You might be able to apply that in planning. Probably not. That's a really bad analogy, but like you might find that you do something somewhere else and now it's helping you here. You learn computer programming, right? And suddenly now you've invented some piece of software that's better than anything you've ever seen and it solves all the world's problems. But you would never do that if you haven't given yourself like a little bit of grace to go out there and try something new. All right, so what does this look like in the real world? Sorry, I'm running out of screen space here. Patrick Meyer founded the Digital Humanitarian Network. After Haiti, the Haiti earthquake, that was like unimaginable disaster, unimaginable level of a disaster. They had hundreds of thousands of people injured and killed. Basically, every single building on the island was destroyed. Government completely collapsed. So people looked at this problem and were like, I don't even know which part to bite off to chew. Like, I am completely overwhelmed. And one of the biggest challenges was we didn't have a civilian common operating picture. We didn't have a way of tracking teams and figuring out where to send people at this time. And so he found this system called Ushahidi, which was an open source system that was built for humanitarian work in, I believe, Saharan Africa, working with communities in a bunch of different countries, but to track their teams and make sure that they were fulfilling their requirements. And this is a quote from like, after he decided to take that platform, connect it to the military, connect it to our USAR teams we were sending down, the volunteer organizations, and start to build a picture of what was being done, tracking what needed to be done. And he said, we made it up as we went along because it hadn't been done before. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect, but it started with something. I'm going to show you a couple, starting with something. This is 2012. We're up at Franklin County Airport. Again, Jarlath, just the GOAT. Miss him every day. Adam, who's presenting here, Jim, Ernie. We're like, can we use drones to fly disasters? This came after Irene because we had a bunch of places that were gone and we couldn't get information about what was going on there. And so this was the first flight. This is the first, we called it the Drunken Raven, and then the US Department of Transportation that funded it didn't like that because the plane was black and it used to fly like this. So it looked like a drunken raven. But we went there and we're like, all right, we're going to try it. And this was the first product that we got out of it. And now we're off and running. Like, we can map elevation. We can create maps for disaster response. Probably everyone here has seen the maps in the last few flood events. That all came up from an idea of Jarlath. This is the emergency management of tomorrow research project. The wrinkles weren't helping. There was 2 meetings in the entire country. One of them was in Region 1. That's Emily Marticello. She invited me. She's like, hey, you know AI stuff. You should come to this. So the Northwest Pacific National Laboratory got a bunch of us in a room and was like, what doesn't work right now? And they didn't give us any rules. They said anything to do with disaster response, anything. What doesn't work? You're like, it really sucks, like having to fill out forms and then put them in other forms and upload them and get them to something. Like, okay, great. What else? Hey, I would really like, in the early part of a disaster, there's all this information coming in and you have to somehow use your human brain to process this. And it's really hard when it's just you. And they're like, okay, great. So now they're building products and doing research on this stuff to make it better, right? Again, just endlessly curious. Christian Cunny, I hung out with him in IEM out in Colorado. These are all the folks, this is my people. And it all just kind of starts with the question, like, what can be done better? You've heard me list a lot of names. A strong believer in a rising tide lifts all ships, right? Dr. Dupini Giroux from UVM introduced me to emergency management. She connected me with Bill Ballard for an internship. She was like, you might like this. Lo and behold, I actually ended up working for Bill later on and then became the university's emergency manager. She also connected me to the National Weather Service. I did an internship with the National Weather Service. Scott Whittier, who's here, I interned with him. Every single person in this room now knows me. You can connect with me. You're not in this alone. And I don't think we have time for Q&A, so you just chase me down at lunch. And you're stronger with a community. Like having all of us together, we can do really cool things. And so I want you to connect with me. This is my LinkedIn. If you don't have LinkedIn, just take a business card. Plus the wrinkles may not make this work. But yes, that's my presentation. So hopefully you all are fired up and you want to go do cool stuff. I encourage you to break things. I do it all the time. It's like the most fun part of my job and my life, and then make it better. So thank you.